Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second annual APRU Metagames Conference. This is the second day of programming of the annual Delve hosted by Cyberport. To our honorable guests and online viewers, welcome. My name is Pamela Tang and I am your host today. We have an exciting program for you today, featuring panel discussions on skills of the future and the gamification of social well-being, in which we seek to foster collaboration between industry and universities on strategies to work together in order to build thriving esports communities across the Asia Pacific. Our range of distinguished speakers are from Hong Kong and mainland China, Japan, France, Singapore, and the USA to share their insights. We encourage you to actively participate in the conference by asking questions during the sessions. Simply scan the QR code shown on the screen. Also, don't forget to share your experience on social media and tag us at #DELF2021 at APRU1997. To kick off today's event, may we please invite Mr. Sherman Cheng, Chief Financial Officer of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. As a network of leading research universities linking the Americas, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific, the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, APRU, is the voice of knowledge and innovation for the Asia-Pacific region. It brings together thought leaders, researchers, and policymakers to exchange ideas and collaborate on effective solutions to the challenges of the 21st century. Mr. Cheng, please.
All distinguished guests and participants, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. No matter where and how you are joining us today, I welcome you to APRU's second Metagame Conference in partnership with Cyberport here today. We are deeply grateful to our host, Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport, for including our international conference as the spotlight event of the Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum here in Hong Kong, also known as Delve. As one of the strategic pillars for Cyberport, we look forward to building a longer-term partnership between APRU and Cyberport for the development of the esports ecosystem in Hong Kong and in the Asia-Pacific region. To highlight, Cyberport has supported the APRU's esports fellowship program by offering students insights and access to esports industry through workshops, internship opportunities, and entrepreneurship opportunities. Fitting another pillar, Cyberport Partners, APRU has established its new International University Center, RUC, at Cyberport this past February with a grand opening ceremony last month. Together with our network members in Hong Kong, the RUC provides an opportunity for all APRU members to work with around 800 startups and technology companies here at Cyberport. As the digital technology hub in Hong Kong, APRU brings our international network to Cyberport, whereby we aim to take our collaboration to the next level to empower innovative talent and steer the industry forward. Last year, we held our inaugural Metagame Conference also on Day 2 of Delve. During that conference, we presented different ideas that were at the forefront of the esports ecosystem development, such as policy discussions, next-generation learning, and inclusion and diversity. Riding on that success, for this year's Metagame Conference, we are bringing together two panels comprising local and international experts. What's more, we are very honored to have in our presence two prominent speakers, Mr. Sam Barrett from the United Nations Environment Programme and Professor Patrick Williams from the Nanyang Technological University of Singapore. As a network of 61 leading universities, from 19 economies around the Pacific Rim, reaching over 2 million students. APRU has supported both academic and non-academic activities related to competitive gaming. Our goal is to equip students with the skills needed to succeed in many careers via these activities. But what skills are needed for fast-changing future trends, such as metaverse, blockchain, art tech, and other emerging technologies? How can higher education, particularly universities, contribute to this goal? These are very practical questions that are begging for answers. Besides our outreach to students, a substantial portion of APRU work is dedicated to addressing imminent global challenges. Using games as digital entertainment has long been a part of the cultural fabric across continents. With APRU's network of over 200,000 academic scholars from our members' institutions, what international view can APRU bring to the table to address these issues? What can a network like APRU, in partnership with Cyberport, find ways that games can improve our social well-being? We aim that through our panels today, we will be able to answer some of these questions and deepen our understandings on these topics. Esports is often seen as a gold mine of prize money for high-achieving individuals, but these are comparatively few. Also, the business model is by no means established, and professional life of a top player is very limited. Even the technology is in the early stages of development, despite the punch it delivers currently. How do we elevate students' interest in viewing esports as a sustainable industry with a better trajectory and many future opportunities? That is why we are holding a student paper competition for this year's conference. The competition focuses on 3 areas, namely business models for esports industry, esports for social goods, and health and wellness in esports. To engage all participants in our conference, all of you will have a chance to determine the winners in each category by participating in the real-time polling during the paper presentation session. The winners will be instantaneously announced during our awards ceremony. This should give you a good reason to stay for the full conference. We will conclude this year's Metagame Conference by presenting a show match and regional tournament featuring teams competing in League of Legends, Wild Rift. We in APRU are very ambitious about shaping a positive future for esports and its contribution to the society. We are also very ambitious about our partnership with Cyberport. To this end, I thank Mr. Peter Yan and Cyberport again, and Professor Pei-Shi Chung of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, who has volunteered her time during the past 3 months to assist us in putting together the students' competition. Further, our thanks extend to other judges for their contribution, as well as moderators and panelists who will be sharing with us their insights. We would also express our thanks to Next 10 Esports and Yes Sports, as well as all APRU members who are actively supporting our esports program and in attendance today. Last but not least, I would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues at APRU who have spent enormous efforts in putting this event together, and for them to show up today to support the event. Without them, our Metagame Conference would not have been possible. Thank you very much. I wish you all having a great and enjoyable time at our Metagame Conference.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Thank you very much. Please may we invite Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport Management Company, to give us the welcome remarks. Mr. Peter Yan is the Chief Executive Officer of the Hong Kong Cyberport Management Company Limited. As the CEO of Cyberport, Mr. Yan leads the digital technology flagship to focus on fostering talent, cultivation, industry development, and integration of new and traditional enterprises to realize Cyberport's vision to create new impetus for Hong Kong's new economy through digital technology. Mr. Yan, please.
Chairman, Acting Secretary General, APRU, Christopher, who's joining us online in New Zealand, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good day. Welcome to the second Association of Pacific Rim Universities Metagame Conference. Now, following the great success from last year, it is Cyberport's pleasure to once again co-host this meaningful event with APRU. Along with our annual Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum, DELF, we are excited to be part of this important conversation to explore how Hong Kong can be a more favorable ecosystem and an emerging esports hub in the region. We are here to develop the ecosystem and to nurture talents and build career pathways for them in the esports sector. A key focus of Cyberport is to cultivate talent in innovation and technology. We have a growing community of 150 startups in the digital entertainment space, and esports clusters is one of the key clusters within the digital entertainment, with aspiring talents making headway on their entrepreneurship journeys. It is our pleasure to have APRU as our key partner, as a premier alliance of over 60 leading research universities that brings together thought leaders, researchers, and policymakers to exchange ideas. APRU plays a pivotal part in shaping the future of our youth. I'm very delighted to share that last month, we have the official opening of APRU's new head office, the APRU International University Center at Cyberport. We believe it will facilitate the collaboration and create greater synergy between Cyberport and APRU as the two parties continue to work closely to promote the esports industry and nurture talents by introducing various activities. Now, one of the activities that we are going to include in our partnership, which Sherman has shared just now, is to launch the first APRU Students Esports Paper Competition by supporting esports as an academic specialty and encouraging students to have innovative and quality research in the esports field, as well as promoting long-term investment into esports research. The competition would enrich students and universities' resources and knowledge pool in this fast-growing space. The winner will be announced later today, so stay tuned. Join us in their presentation to learn about what will be the winners and the scholarships worth $12,000 in total. We are also partnering with APRU again for this second cohort of APRU Esports Fellowship Program. The program pulls together students leaders in the Pacific Rim and engages them in learning experience that support the growth of healthy, vibrant esports community, helping them to become the future leaders of esports industry. Now, in this 6 months program, Cyberport will enlighten students with insights and access to the esports industry through workshop, internship opportunities, and entrepreneurship opportunities. Our collaboration with APRU for the esports paper competition and APRU Esports Fellowship Program will help youngsters in Hong Kong deepen their understanding of esports as an emerging industry and build up an international peer network for their esports career. I again extend the warmest welcome to APRU in joining us on the Cyberport campus, and we look forward to many more exciting collaborations with impact makers of like mind. Let's kickstart this enjoyable morning. Thank you very much and enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Yan. Thank you very much. Please may I ask you to remain on stage, and may I please also invite Mr. Sherman Chang once again on stage for a photograph. Thank you very much, both. Thank you. To begin our two panels today, please welcome our keynote address by Mr. Sam Barrett, Chief of Youth Education and Advocacy Unit, Ecosystems Division, the United Nations Environment Programme. Mr. Sam Barrett is Chief of the Youth, Education and Advocacy Unit in UNEP's Ecosystems Division and co-chair of the UN Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, HESI. At UNEP, he founded the Playing for the Planet Alliance, a collaboration with the video gaming industry to nudge gamers' behavior and for the industry to use cleaner energy, launched Earth School with TED-Ed, and oversees the work of UNEP's Youth and Education Alliance, with networks representing over 2,700 universities from around the world. He also manages the non-formal education program work with the Girl Guides and World Scout movement, which has seen the launch of the Tide Turners Plastic Challenge Badge program and a New Earth Tribe initiative on environmental education. Mr. Barrett, please.
Hello everyone, my name's Sam Barrett and I'm the Chief of Youth Education and Advocacy for the UN Environment Programme, and I'm based in Kenya, in Nairobi. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, so I'm afraid this recording will have to do. And I hope it might provide some interesting context before your next panel session. So without any further ado, I just wanted to run through a bit of an update about why is the UN working with the gaming industry and where are we trying to get to. So the first thing is we really do think the video gaming industry can deliver for people and the planet. And we have an enormous challenge in front of us right now when it comes to the climate and environmental crisis. So the first thing I would share with you is just, and I think you know this already, but the scope and the reach of the video gaming industry is unbeatable. In every country, across every generation, people are playing. Whether it's casual gamers on their mobiles or whether it's people playing on their consoles, I think the video gaming industry is probably the most powerful entertainment medium in the world. And when you look at the crisis that we're trying to face and deliver on the global development goals, we've got a lot to do. And on this chart you'll see here are the blue and the green ones at the bottom. And because unless we have a healthy planet, delivering on the other social and economic goals get much, much harder. So at UN Environment, we work at the bottom ones, so on the blue and the green, and that's what we're here to do. And the reason we think this is more important is because we have a climate crisis and we need all hands on deck. And so what we're doing at UN Environment is to try and stop the apocalypse and these scenes happening here and give hope. And I think in the video gaming industry, that's possible. And so what we have done is to work with a number of different members. So here is a list of them. We have now about 30, and they range from really big players like Microsoft and Sony, but also trade associations who really can spread the message in their networks, but also some other new and smaller studios that are up and running and thinking about the environment in a really powerful way. So we're delighted to have everyone on board, no matter how big or small. So the impact so far, and I think it's only 2 years old, so don't judge us too harshly, but I think we've made a difference. And I think I'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but we've reached about 130 million through the Green Game Jam. And we've had some really good feedback on that, and that's been run with both console and mobile. Members are taking action, and we're trying to make this something that everyone does. So at least 50 different actions have been reported on in the impact report we'll put out next month. But we're also getting the members to reduce their own carbon footprint and look at this both in terms of across the entire spectrum, so their emissions, their supply chain's emissions and the gamers' emissions, and see what they can do to make a difference. So the key projects we're working on include the following. First of all, we're looking hard at green activations in games. And we've worked with, must be about 30 studios, both on console and mobile, to really get involved in the Green Game Jam that we do every year. As I've mentioned already, it's reached 130 million. And we've also started to work with Timmy about a new young Green Game Jam to really get students thinking about what they can do. And we still have got 7 big studios to launch, and I'll be talking about that as well. So on the Green Game Jam, we had about 8 or 9 different categories for votes, and we had about 100,000 people vote for which ones they liked the most, and some of them were absolutely fantastic. And I think the potential for it can be seen in games such as Riders Republic. It's one of my son's favourite games, and it might even be mine. And I shouldn't show any bias, particularly working for the UN, but it's a beautiful game where the landscape is what you play on, and I enjoy my mountain bike at the weekends, but to play on this game and just to go through the amazing landscapes in the US shows that I think nature is always in the background in every game, but the question is what can you do for nature in the foreground, and how can we think about the power of beauty and the awe of nature in play? And there's going to be some really big ideas coming through on this game in the next few months. On climate and restoration, as I've mentioned, we've got a lot of the members committing to reduce their emissions, which is great. But we've also planted 1.2 million trees. And I really wanted to give credit to a beautiful game called Alba by Us2 that have planted over 1 million trees. And I think it shows what's possible with the community in this game really kind of stepping up to make a difference with Alba on her journey. So I think that really shows what's possible, both in terms of taking online action into real world impact. And I think that's what we're keen to see more and more in this initiative. Growth. I think we're trying to make this a mainstream initiative for the many. And we've had another 7 companies join this year. But also what's great is the associate members, the trade associations, that can then start to filter this down across a much wider community of studios in the world. And so now we have studios from the UK, from France, from Germany, Australasia, all across the world starting to get involved. And we're also starting to scale up in China as well. And we're looking to build on that with a new secretariat next year. So what next? Good question. There's a lot more we can do, and I think we've only just got started. So we're looking to really deepen the impact of the work and try and scale this up, but we know we need to do that. But we also want to increase the engagement to see what more we can do in play, to really see how gamers who do play really care about the planet as well, and we're starting to see that in polling, and to see how activations can be placed in games that can make a difference both in the real world and offline as well. And I think the other thing is just to have more impact. I mean, it sounds silly, but I think there's more we can do on decarbonisation. And what's great to see is other sectors are looking at what the video gaming industry is doing, and the music industry is following our footsteps. So I think I'll leave it there, and I'll hope that you're having a good time. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'd love to be there with you in person, but sadly leaving Nairobi is not the easiest right now. But thank you for listening. I hope I was at least interesting, maybe even compelling. And if you want to get in touch, here are our details here. So Siri Makale and I work on this, and we'd love to hear from you. So over to you for the next session, and thanks for listening, and get in touch if you're keen to know more. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We will now invite our next keynote address by Professor Patrick Williams, Associate Professor of Sociology, School of Social Sciences, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. His primary areas of research are culture and identity, wherein he splits his time between the study of subcultural identity and authenticity on the one hand, and game-related experiences and identities on the other. Among his many publications, he has authored and edited several books on culture, identity, and games, including Gaming as Culture, Essays in Social Reality, Identity, and Experience in Fantasy Games 2006, Subcultural Theory, Traditions and Concepts 2011, and Studies on the Social Construction of Identity and Authenticity 2020. His current research focuses on the significance of DIY culture and identity in the growth of esports in Singapore. Professor Williams, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I am Patrick Williams, an Associate Professor of Sociology at the School of Social Sciences, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And of course, today I'm here to give a brief keynote address entitled Esports, Culture, and Everyday Life at the Metagame Conference 2021. I would like to start by thanking APRU and Cyberport Hong Kong for their support and for enabling this conference to occur so that we can all share information with each other today. Just another brief note, I'm going to actually reduce my face down here in the corner of the slide so that it does not interfere with the remainder of the slides that I'll be showing you today. So please feel free to listen and follow along. Video games are everywhere these days. They're ubiquitous in popular culture and in everyday life. And in the past 10 years especially, there are quickly growing international, national, and local esports ecosystems around the world as well. And of course, we know that the reason for this Metagame conference is to bring us together, to pull together our collective intelligence among APR universities and the esports industry, to facilitate research in this field, to ensure that esports itself matures in a socially responsible and meaningful way. Exciting work has been going on, like I said, in this past decade, and one of the things that I find quite interesting is the growth of a conceptual understanding of what we can call the esports ecosystem. And of course, esports is not just about professional athletes. Rather, it's about a host of interconnected roles and activities that crisscross various aspects of digital culture and the digital economy, from organizers to coaches to content creators to business developers. Last year's inaugural Metagame conference started to deal with some of this, and we heard speakers ask some, I think, pretty big questions about building up this esports ecosystem. But a lot of that talk was in terms of markets and products, and I think we also need to ask some other kinds of big questions, particularly about, for example, developing career opportunities and trajectories for young people, but specifically thinking about the fact that they grow up in this kind of neoliberal world where work is more precarious, safety nets are smaller, or to think about how esports is developing understanding that playing games exists oftentimes for young people who are surrounded by people who don't believe that playing games all the time is a good idea, or that don't support the idea of professionalization around esports. There's also questions of equity and diversity. And here I think we need to think about, for example, who's at the center of this ecosystem. In this case, the players themselves or specific game titles and game companies, but who also exists on the peripheries here, and what roles do they have both now and in the future. There's other kinds of questions to deal with as well. Video game culture has been called out recently, as well as over time, for its toxicity, for practices that are seen as sexist and that allow and sometimes even promote bullying and other kinds of harmful practices. And so I think there's general questions that still need to be asked. For example, how does one's education, how does one's language that's spoken, how does one's physical appearance or their social or emotional competency or other factors, how do these affect young people's success within the esports ecosystem? And not just their success, but their participation and practice more generally. These are all important kinds of questions that I think we can address in a number of ways. Now, my own research focuses particularly on trying to better understand esports from a bottom-up, do-it-yourself or DIY youth cultural perspective. And this perspective aligns with what Henry Jenkins and colleagues have called participatory culture. And as the definition says here, participatory culture is a culture with relatively low barriers to artistic expression and civic engagement, strong support for creating and sharing those creations, and some type of informal mentorship whereby experienced participants pass along knowledge to novices. And I like this idea because the concept of participatory culture shifts the focus away from kind of the macro and formal industries or markets or programs, and instead focuses more in depth on the micro and the informal, that is, on the everyday lives of individuals and groups that participate in esports. It doesn't give preference to the fraction of 1% of players who will become professional athletes, but rather it focuses on, or at least considers, the other 99% that practice esports as part of everyday life. And in short, I think it puts young people and their mundane media practices and activities at the center of scholarship. Now, to understand why this kind of bottom-up perspective may be important, let's compare it to something like, in this case, Skills Future, as you see on this slide. Skills Future is something that is built up. It's an initiative in Singapore for the digital workplace. And as the quote here from the homepage says, Skills Future is to help citizens understand emerging technologies and how they impact work, interpret and use data, and adopt a positive mindset for change, innovation, and resilience. So the broad question I'm asking in my own research is about the kinds of knowledge and skills that young people develop through their participation in esports and how that may compare to more formal top-down government initiatives such as this one in Singapore called Skills Future. And it's my own personal as well as academic opinion that young people do have the ability through participatory culture and through participation in esports specifically to teach themselves and others various kinds of skills necessary for active participation in 21st century digital societies, regardless of these kinds of top-down initiatives. Now, my research has 3 objectives, which I'd like to go through just quickly to give you an idea. The first objective deals with what. It's to identify and describe the different kinds of knowledge and skills that are relevant to esports participation, which may also prepare participants for former careers in Singapore's knowledge-based digital economy. And of course, excuse me, these ideas or these skills and knowledge sets can be technical or communicative, collaborative, aesthetic, and so on. There may be lots of different knowledge and skill sets, and this first question is trying to identify those. The second objective deals with how. It is intended to investigate the kind of formal as well as informal mechanisms within the esports industry and culture that facilitate different kinds of knowledge and skill development. So whether that's participation in a professional training program for athletes, or signing up for a one-off weekend course on how to stream on Twitch, or just playing with maybe fellow students on a campus league or in a tournament. All of these practices consist of the creation and sharing and consuming of different forms of knowledge and skills. And finally, the third objective kind of deals with or focuses on the who. It's about describing how the creation, sharing, and learning of such knowledge and skills is actually experienced by participants in relation to their own leisure practices as well as to their own career plans and aspirations. And certainly the career opportunities or trajectories differ greatly between, for example, a university student who's getting an athletic scholarship to other individuals who may even forego tertiary education in hopes of making it big as a streamer or a game influencer. And so we need to understand who these different individuals are within the esports ecosystem. We need to understand their experiences in and around esports and try to connect that to their own, again, hopes, goals, and aspirations through their play. Now, these are some of the topics not only that I'm interested in, but that are being discussed by other participants at the conference today. And I think there's a recognition that esports participation not only involves these kinds of knowledge and skills development, but also impacts people's personal and social well-being. Whether we want to talk about, individual well-being in terms of mental or physical health, of self-confidence, of developing problem-solving skills, or improving academic performance, or whether we want to think on the more social dimensions, such as providing opportunities to build safe and inclusive communities of play, developing friendship networks and peer networks that could pay off later as in one's adult life. I think esports has the capacity to prepare people in a number of ways to actively participate in creating and then living a digital life.
And so reappearing here on the last slide, what I hope is that the Metagame Conference 2021 serves as a useful platform for everyone involved to discuss these and other important topics. I want to thank APRU and Cyberport Hong Kong again, and I wish all of you a happy conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Williams, for sharing your insights and findings. We now welcome our first panel discussion, Esports, Gaming, and the Skills of the Future. This session will be moderated by Mr. Eric Chan, Chief Public Mission Officer, Hong Kong Cyberport. Joining him on stage is Mr. Tim Shen, CEO and founder, Yes Sports Media Limited. And virtually, please welcome Dr. Baron Hyun, Director, Digital Content Advisory, TMT, KPMG Consulting Japan, Professor Yu Pei Zhao, College of Media and International Culture, Zhejiang University, and Mr. Niall Sky, Kailua University of Hawaii. Thank you. We'll have a Q&A for you this session. You may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Mr. Chan, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. So, hello. Team. Good morning. You're looking as smart as usual.
Oh, thank you.
And hello, everyone joining us online. And also particularly, our panel speakers. Well, this is the first panel in the APRU Meta Conference themed Esports, Gaming, and Skills of the Future. Before we get started with the deep dive questions, why don't I ask all our panelists for each of you to introduce yourself and your background and share your ideas and thoughts about what types of training needs to occur in order to prepare students for the digital society, and what more needs to be done, and what are the opportunities for esports to play a role. Maybe I ask Tim to get started first.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to share this panel with all the professionals, especially Eric. I have prepared a brief PPT because today looks like the issues, there are quite a few, from esports, gaming, skills, metaverse, blockchain, digital arts. So I hope these few pages of PPT can summarize my thoughts for your reference. Yeah. So a little bit on my background. In short, I am a fund manager. So for our practice, not only we have been focusing on investing in listed public equities, but we are also active investors and operators in private equity projects, including esports projects. So for the esports project, I'm the investor and founder of a international esports group by the name of Yes Sports. For that, we mainly engage in the midstream and downstream of the esports ecosystem. Mainly, it means we cover operations such as events, tournaments, online education, esports, games downloading, and supplies. And recently, we just launched our NFT marketplace to facilitate our esports talents. In terms of the achievements for this group, as of now, after 3 years of operations, we now cover 60 plus countries with, as of today, about 7 million registered users. Within our platform, we also are now managing 20,000 plus talents from 25 countries, covering a wide aspect of professionals, from gamers, coaches, commentators, KOLs, game designers, etc. So maybe we go to the other parts of the slide just to run through a little bit of the other information. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of metaverse, I think this is a good way to start this part of the presentation, because at the end, I hope all the elements we would like to cover can be inclusive in this kind of setup, which for metaverse, we always like to pinpoint the 4 pillars. The first is the technology, second is the community, the third is the trading platform or tools, and the last are the entry points. So in terms of the more detailed explanation, for example, like technology, usually metaverse, the basic component is the blockchain, AR, VR, AI, token, wallet, etc. And community is a must-have because for any platform, you need participants. And in terms of trading platform or tools, usually operator will make use of NFT. And the last but not least are the entry points. Esports is always or is now the pleasant most applied functions or applications for most metaverse. And again, in this chart, you can see it right in the middle because of the what we call the element applications that will include esports, gaming, and other entertainment type like art, concerts, etc. But on the other hand, metaverse obviously will cover applications in work, in education, and especially for investments. Such as in the case of this Decentraland, we can see investors or participants have been actively buying up virtual land for their own development. So this chart will hopefully show where we position ourselves. As you can see, our esports group, Yes Sports, is right in the middle or tending to migrate to the upper right corner, achieving the metaverse status. Same, more or less same for our NFT marketplace SWORD. For the other PE operations of ours, though looks like there is still some distance from achieving the metaverse status, but it all provides the elements of the 4 pillars I just mentioned. So this is another chart showing, hopefully with our present operations in the few PE projects, we already occupy the center core of this metaverse universe. And what we need is just to expand on all sides in order to achieve a well-rounded metaverse platform. And obviously, these are the market leaders, including NVIDIA, which is a CPU or GPU operator, Meta, which is Facebook, and focusing on social media, Roblox, which is a blockchain game company. So I think this will provide insights for especially the youngsters who want to pursue a future career in metaverse or esports, how to position their skills. And especially in Hong Kong, students usually want to have a career in the financial system. And for example, like want to become fund manager or an analyst. A good sign is that just within the past 2 months, there are already some listed funds that mainly focusing on metaverse. And not only these new funds keep coming up, being launched, but you can see the return. The poorest one in this group is also in the positive range. Not to mention the best performer has about 50% in just 1 month. This just shows what are the most popular NFTs people are dealing with in the NFT marketplaces. Yeah. And just mentioned what is the latest marketplace. And our intention is to facilitate talents, especially talents in the art and the esports areas, to exhibit that these youngsters are multi-talented. Yeah, so this concludes my intro on our operations. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, team. So may I now turn to Barrow, probably to introduce yourselves as well. I know Barrow is now in Japan, right? Hi, Barrow.
Barrow, you should turn on your voice, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep. So nice to meet you, Eric. Thanks for having me today. I'm based in Tokyo, as you said. And so let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm afraid we're having some technical issue to show an actual slide, so mine will be entirely verbal. So hi everyone, I'm Barrow Hyun. I'm based in Tokyo, as I said, and I work for a company called KPMG Consulting, and I'm a director for digital content advisory. So a little bit of background about myself. I'm originally from South Korea, grew up in the States. I was trained as an engineer, but I have a PhD in aerospace engineering, but my passion took me where I am, so I'm happy to say that I'm doing something completely unrelated to my degree. What we do at KPMG, we started from 2018 as a name called the Esports Advisory. And that was before Japan really took off with the esports scene, because coming to Japan as an outsider, it was kind of odd seeing Japan, such a big gaming nation, wasn't that big in esports back when I came to Japan in 2016 and 17 timeframe. So we took that as an opportunity. And I put myself as a mission to transform KPMG, which is not known as any sort of gaming or esports related services, but it's more known as auditing or tax or accounting, into something more esports focused service provider. So there was a lot of challenge, but I think the effort was very rewarding. And since we started from 2018, it really took off from there. So from then, right now we have a vast, range of clients. Majorly, so we provide think tank service for the Japanese government, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry on their esports activity. So in 2019, we actually published a comprehensive esports market report on the future Japanese esports market. On the other hand, we also have a lot of private sector clients that is, not only focusing on, gaming or esports content themselves, but also the business around. And the part of the reason we really try to focus on, the esports business, and that comes to, the question why we joined as KPMG. And the bottom line is that, as we see the gaming market, I grew up as a gamer when I was young, of course, but then, gaming ecosystem has been, focused on the player themselves and also the game publisher who creates the game. So we see that the business ecosystem was relatively small, whereas being esports, that paradigm has been shifted to more viewership-based entertainment. You don't have to really be a player, or you don't have to actually create games or have your own IP. There's many different ways of approaching this industry. You can be a sponsor, event organizer, team owner, etc., etc. And therefore, this gives a lot of opportunities and options for company owners or business owners who originally had nothing to do with esports. And that's where we come in as KPMG, providing a third-party advisory service on making those business decisions. And last but not least, we also started providing esports educational service right from off the bat, where we started in 2018, because we thought that a lot of the activities going on, especially in this digital content business, is really either on creating the content themselves, or being focused on the performance, like being an esports player. But even if you don't have that artistic talent or that performance, there's still a lot of room that you can associate with this field, and that's actually the business side of it, and that's where we really try to contribute. So with KO University, we've been providing a esports business dedicated curriculum since 2018. Now it's gradually expanding out over to not only esports, but also in gaming and metaverse as well. So that's sort of the overview of what we do over here locally. And also, as I said, I have a lot of passion in this field. And last year, I have published a book myself called Demystifying Esports. And if you are curious about, how esports really started as a business in South Korea back in the 90s, and how it really grew up from there, feel free to take a look. It's my personal take on how it's really get into shape. And honestly, back when we were playing, nobody really knew that this is going to be this big, but this is, now it's a global phenomenon. So it's really like there are a lot of humble stories that happened back in Korea. I know Sky also agrees on some of the points. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look at it. And thanks for having me again.
Thank you, Barrow. Next, we have Professor Yupei Zhao from Zhejiang University. Professor Zhao, please.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you guys here, and I'm really appreciate APRU to invite me to have this kind of conversation to other talents here. And today I would like to show some of my recent research about esports industry and culture. So, Anna, could you help me to share my slides here? Yeah.
Can we share the slides from Professor Zhao? No? Okay.
Oh, you can't. Can I do my stuff? Oh, I can't because someone other participate. I also do the sharing. So. Okay. No matter, it's fine. And I would like to take this chance to introduce a little bit more about my recent research. So firstly, I would like to give you a background of what I am doing. I'm based in Zhejiang University, and to be honest, I'm probably the one scholar who fully concentrated on esports culture in China. And I have done a lot of research about, for example, how the esport player could sustain their career, and also how could we take this kind of platformization of infrastructure and infrastructuralized of platform to looking at esport industry like Tencent. And also I'm looking at the well-being and the psychological capital about esport players and how they interact with the clubs and their leaders and also the coaches, so etc. So today I would like to demonstrate one of my recent research about identity transformation under the concept of the stigma power to looking at the mental well-being of the Chinese esport player. So the background is because in 2003, the State General Administration of the Sport of China approved esport as the country's 1990s official sport. And the second turning point of the year is 2016 because China surpassed the United States as the world's largest digital gaming market. And in 2018, the revenue for online and offline PC mobile esport and games in China exceeded RMB 91.2 billion. So over 350 million consumers play mobile ones. So we know that there is an ongoing debate and misunderstanding about esport and video games. So even though there are a lot of research about this kind of discrepancies between esport and video games, but no matter from the skills, organization, professionalism, and institutions, this kind of key dimensions can help to clarify that esport has their own rules, their own, industrial parts when differ from the video industry. So my research keep asking three important questions about esport players. Are you athlete? Are you sure you're athlete? Are you an athlete? So this comes of three questions to chase on how their attitude and try to identify how their self-perceive, their identity transformation. So actually in the first period from 2003 to 2011, which I called the first reflux of the period in China, because during the time we know we have this kind of cultural value issues that roots in the stereotype of the online gaming describing as the hero, right? So which means the people or the young people who choose to be professional athletes have suffered with this kind of cultural values issues. So at that time, this kind of young people who are renting a house for both living and working, and they have no secured investment and no insurance, no corporation model. So they suffered a lot to destigmatize themselves, and they are still suffering this kind of prejudice. So during that time, there is still blurred boundary between professional and non-professional. However, in 2011, there's a turning point because of the three main factors have driven this kind of fascinating development of esport industry in China. The first reason because of the Chinese government, who has facilitated numerous policies and events to support esport industry, including the game content, the licensing, tournaments, education, coaches, and in terms of a lot of welfare to attract the professional players. And also there's a list of the policies launched by over 9 departments in China to support this industry. In particular, the 2016, Chinese esport industry entered a new stage because the administration from different departments have covered support for importing digital technology from other Chinese states and encourage the industry to improve the development of mobile games, live streaming services, and VR technology. And the third is because they founded the initiative to organize the international and national professional esport tournaments. The last point is they encourage the Chinese college and university to offer professional esport courses. So because the background of this macro development, and also because of the regional level governing body, but like Shanghai, Chengdu, Xi'an, this kind of top cities have launched a series of the policy to attract the clubs and the players. And also, we have observed that the most important is that official news agencies have started to refer esports professionals as athletes rather than adepts. They have been legitimized as national heroes by winning the International Esports Championship. So there's a lot of changes since 2011 to 2016. And of course, since 2016, we called golden age has come. However, we still have a lot of suffering, like the policy of banning esports from television broadcast brought this kind of important changes about esports industry change in China. So live streaming broadcast platform as the main bottom string of the esports value chain has played a key role as the most important distribution channel. However, this kind of change has, drive some players into an economic-driven career path because there is a large salary gap of the average annual income of the official players between 18,000 RMB to 20 million RMB. So my concern, or I would like to tentatively close my speech today is I have concerns about this kind of role of live streaming played in esports distribution bottom line, and also because we are talking about the groups is young people and the players who have a very short golden age for to sustain their career. In China, the golden age is between 15 to 22 years old. So we have a lot of concerns about they have this kind of determinant to sustain their career paths. However, the happy or the owner is I have a lot of responses for esports players. They have demonstrated that the career life is very short, but you will choose it because they have passion on it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, professors. So next we have Mr. Nao Sky Pavilo from University of Hawaii. Hi, Nao. I think you're mute.
Okay, apologies. Am I unmuted?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm now Sky Kaviloa. I'm a PhD student at the University of Hawaii. And thank you guys for having me at the APRU Mega Games Conference. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to actually start out my introduction with a few pictures. The slides that I brought have actually been from a recent event that took place in Honolulu on the UH Manoa campus. And what took place really, I think, encapsulates, a lot of the points that have been made by the keynote speakers and by the panelists themselves. And this idea of not centering the player within the ecosystem. And what took place, and we can go to the next slide to start the presentation. What took place is really an event where we had one of the biggest video game companies in North America come to Honolulu, again, come to the Manoa campus of the University of Hawaii to hold Overwatch events. And the Overwatch events were events that really defined a new relationship between a very large video game company, a developer, a publisher, and Hawaii itself. To kind of go off the keynote speakers when they talked about the idea of the environment playing a fundamental role in games. The idea here is that the Activision Blizzard publisher and developer wanted to come to Hawaii because they wanted to figure out a way in which they could create global play between North America and East Asia. And it was a very big surprise when I got the call, but it was an event that really kind of changed the direction of what esports could mean for Asia Pacific. And what happened is that it came to the University of Hawaii, and we can go to the next slide, principally because they wanted to use our campus as a point in which they could hold the tournaments, but also because they wanted to use the actual undersea cables that go from Honolulu to Tokyo. And the Tokyo servers are the servers that they actually held the games on. So South Korea and China, the teams that represent South Korea and China for Overwatch would play off the Tokyo servers. And then of course, teams in North America, they would fly to Hawaii, again, to close that gap in transmission rates. And then we would play off the Tokyo servers as well. And this was, again, a fundamental shift in thinking of where Hawaii thought itself in this global discussion around esports. And again, this was a discussion in which the company Activision Blizzard wanted to come and just use facilities. They wanted to rent out space and they wanted to rent out infrastructure. But what actually happened is that we turned this into a larger partnership among students. And what this took place, or what happened in this partnership, is that they actually had professional players flying to Honolulu, right, to Manoa campus. And we were able to create an internship of roughly 20 students. And so in this picture right here, you have the Dallas Fuel. And I'll talk about this a little bit later in our discussion. But a lot of the teams that came from the Overwatch League came from, again, North America. So we had Dallas, we had Atlanta, we had Los Angeles Gladiators. But in reality, these teams are largely South Korean kids, right? And these, again, majority of the Overwatch League is a South Korean league. Roughly around 60% of the players come from South Korea or have Korean backgrounds. And so we were able to turn this into an internship in which students would actually learn how to run the league itself. And so the internship began in May and it ran into August. The Overwatch League would come 1 week in each month from Monday to Friday. And the interns would shadow the entire league. They would learn how to do the IT. So I have a picture right here of the students setting up the networks in the middle at the bottom. And then we had students actually do integrity checks. They had the students set up the actual computers themselves. And so overall, it was a situation in which you had a lot of different literacies and skills being built around this. And so for students themselves, this is not just about learning STEM subjects, but this is an opportunity in which they got to learn a whole host of skills that are really both hard skills and soft skills within the project itself. Once again, I think this is a great example of what we're talking about at this conference, in which it presents a case study of what could happen when you bring together both ARPU universities, you bring universities from the West Coast, from North America, you bring publishers and developers together to do this. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking more about this.
Thank you, Nao. So, in order to leave a little bit more time at the end, for some interactive question and answers, I'll start, talking to each of our panelists, and maybe we can keep the answers short and precise to within, 3 to 4 minutes, so that we can have some time, left for the interactive Q&A. So maybe I'll, turn to Tim, who is sitting next to me, at Cyberport. Well, we know that you have just conducted a couple of metaverse webinar, right? All these new tech, metaverse, blockchain, digital arts, and other emerging technologies. What do you think it will affect, the industry as a whole, and what type of skills you expect, from the future workforce to cope with these emerging technologies? And probably this quickly, also you comment on the importance of empowerment of women, in esports. Thank you, team.
So it's a two-part question. The first part, actually, I have briefly mentioned in my previous PPT. Of course, if it can be uploaded again. That one single slide shows esports, which is part of the entertainment. And on one side is work and education, and the other side is investment, etc. That constitutes the whole metaverse. So for us, the objective is to see that esports, if we are comparing to the so-called financial development, 30, 40 years ago, the slogan is bring Wall Street to the main street. So esports, for us, the reason why for the past 3 years we have been mainly focusing on the midstream, downstream, because that will cover and addresses a majority of the esports participants. But still, we think the most satisfactory goal is to include as many people as possible, because even though now in the successful cases of, say, Roblox, every day they have about 40 million plus users at the same time. But if we compare to the now global population of 90 billion plus, this is still a very small number. And the reason mainly that for someone like myself, I call myself old guys, we actually are not that quite interested sometimes in certain kind of sports that will get the youngsters excited. So if some kind of future games that can include most of the population, that will be the ideal situation, which I think is very probable. And that's why for us, we are planning next year, we also will enter the upstream of esports, which is the game publishing. But the type of game we are looking at are the blockchain games. Because blockchain games, at least the advantage is people not only can come and enjoy, participate as a player and user, but they can also create. So creating or being a creator is one way to enhance the participation by the general public. Of course, as I mentioned in my ecosystem, we purposely not only just focusing on the hosting of events, tournaments, talents management, though it covers 25 countries' talents. We also, as I mentioned, have online education, the e-commerce platform, which the purpose again is to facilitate these participants, especially gamers, to show that they are really multi-talented. A good example is if you have heard about a esports KOL by the name of Ninja. Actually, I don't think he has now spent most of the time in participating in any major tournaments. His daily work actually is streaming. But because the model works in a sense, he has a few million or more than 10 million of followers. So even if he is charging $1 per fan, that would mean he is already a millionaire every month. So that's why this is the kind of ecosystem that I hope I can bring to all the esports participants. So for the second part regarding women's participation in esports, actually we are a very active supporter of this movement. Actually, before the global lockdown due to COVID, we have already kickstarted our global series of what we call the Girls Power tournaments. And the first leg already successfully hosted in Philippines. And for that event, it shows that we are right. Not only for that single stop, we have few hundred female esports teams participated. And also in terms of the audience reach, just single event has achieved 10 million plus online audience reach. So, but unfortunately, due to the lockdown, we cannot continue the multiple stops originally being planned for this Girls Power tournament.
Thank you, team. So may I turn to Barrow? We know that you have written a book, called Demystifying Esports, a personal guide to the history and future of competitive And well, we know that many young people are now passionate about esports. So esports is not really about just playing games, but the career opportunities, and also the industry is trying to further develop this as a whole industry. What's your recommendations to universities, to support students pursuing this as a career?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. That's a great question, and glad that you brought that out. So let me start with why I wrote this book. So I wrote this book for my mother-in-law because she thinks that gaming is still evil. Because my two sons who play Fortnite like hours every day, they're like 9 and 7, but they only focus on the game. And for their grandma, who's my mother-in-law, she never played any games. So it's something that she can really, it's hard to relate for her. So I'm seeing that, and that's not only our household, that's also, I think it's pretty much globally what's happening. So we're having this bipolar generation where we have a generation like my parents' generation who never played games, but pretty much from around my generation below, we grew up with games. And knowing that or not knowing that, it's really a different experience, and because you're pretty much not being involved with any sort of gaming community. So I wanted to bridge that gap because knowing that my parents probably not going to play any games for the rest of their life, but they may read a book that's related to them, that's related to gaming or esports, and they may want to understand because that's something that their grandchildren are very passionate about it. And book is something, a very familiar form for the parents' generation. So that's one reason. And also another one was that from the business side, where I work as KPMG as a esports consultant, we went through a lot of a frustrating situation from the business standpoint as well, because a lot of the time when we actually do a proposal to our client who shows a lot of interest, especially on the who's driving the project, that person level, but when it goes to the people who has the decision-making authority on top of the ladder in the corporate organization, oftentimes we get turned down the proposal themselves not because of the business prospects, but more about because they really didn't understand what esports or gaming is. To them, it's really like they have that image. I'm not trying to putting everything in the condescending tone, but it's something that they're not really familiar with. So I wanted to bridge, the bipolar generation kind of situation together with this book. And what I'm trying to, so that also relates to what I do at KU University, because as I said in the intro, I think as an industry, a lot of the focus are being made on, it's a content business, and there's a secondary or tertiary business layer based on that content, and esports, I think it's also has a similar structure. So a lot of the time, the effort is really focused on that content creating, whether that being making a game, playing a good game, or streaming a game, etc. But there's still a room for business professional to be involved, because I think relatively speaking, I think this industry still requires a lot more business professionals who knows the industry, who knows the content side of the business, and who has a passion about the interactive media itself, or also the anime, manga, whatever subcultures that can be related to. So so that's where actually we come in, and we've been very grateful with partnering with KEO, and it's been expanding to other regions as well, that we've been trying to teach the business side of the curriculum, how you can relate, how you can help the industry, and we call in guest speakers from within the industry. So we have had guest speakers like the game publishers locally here in Japan, but also esports event producers or etc. So we have places like HP, Alibaba, Microsoft, Sega, Taito, etc. So, and these are all relatable stakeholders within the esports ecosystem, and they have their own challenges. And I think having students to get that exposure and knowing what's going on it really gives them a firsthand alignment of what they want to do in the future in their career. And that may not be, being a best player in the tournament. That may not be being the best, content creator. It could be, a producer for an event. It could be something completely, not making a content itself, but more business related. So that's where I think we're focusing our effort into. So, I mean, on the side note, so my high school friends back in Korea, they still make fun of me if I when I say I'm doing esports consultant, because they say I was the worst StarCraft player back in high school, and but I'm still contributing in this field in my own way on the business side of it, and I think that's a sort of a message I like to give it to the students, that you don't have to be the great player, you don't have to make a really great content yourself, but still there's a room for contribution. And also at the same time, this is very mutually beneficial to our corporate client as well, because they're always looking for new talents from schools. And it's just that not every company has that benefit to have that a reach directly to the students. And so, for example, the curriculum that we provide is that after having these guest speakers and speak about their industry, at the end of the day, we let our students to do a business pitch, like a consultant. So they dress up all in suit and tie and come to our office, and we bring in all our guest speakers from the industry. And they group up and they give a business pitch about their new business idea on esports. So like imagine they're becoming a startup, and they have a very active discussion with the guest speakers. And if the corporate client, if the conversation goes really well, they can be hired right on spot. So we have students from our class who actually got into like Nintendo and Sony, and that kind of game publishers as well. So and what we're learning from that is that big company also eager to have those first-hand feedback from students directly, because it really, gaming, digital content, or all these entertainment, the core users are the younger generation, Gen Z, as you know. So they want to hear what they're up to, what they like, and how they feel about it. So this is also very valuable to the company side as well. So as us being the middleman trying to connect, the company side and also student side, that has been something very successful locally here. And I believe that can be something, extendable to, other regions and also other target as well.
Okay, thank you, Vero. So apart from doing consultancy, I hope you still have time to improve your game. So let me turn to Professor Xiao. Well, we have learned that recently we have regulations to restrict mainland China young people for online games playing. So we want to hear from you. What's the latest perceptions of esports in mainland, and also? You talk about mental wellness and all this lifespan of competitive esports players as well. So, what should be done, to prolong, their lifespans, and any kind of anecdotes from your studies that you can share, please, Professor.
Thank you for your question. I think what I've totally observed right now is we have more challenge than the milestone we have achieved. So, like I said before, we have still a lot of concerns regarding of either from the governmental bodies or from the industrial, entrepreneurial side. So first, I would like to demonstrate is whether or not esports can make it to CCTV. Is a key to help the esports players to gain the recognition from the society, because most of my interviewees, the young people, have responded that it will be a milestone for them if esports can be allowed to broadcast on CCTV, because their older generation, like the brothers say, the parents or grandparents, they trust in the mainstream media. So that's my first concern, and that's my first the courage for the CCTV. The second is, the decision-making process is a black box, hard to prop in, and the ambiguity found in state policies towards esports precisely exemplify the fragmented nature of Chinese esport policies making process, and one that requires negotiation and bargaining among different departments to build this kind of consensus. Like I said, there are over 9 departments have involved in the regulation of the esport in China, and they have their own policy goals. And the second, my concern is different from Wang Sitong, like I said before, the rich son of the entrepreneur in China who have invested primarily in the individual esport clubs. And Tencent, as leading company, has invested as largely go to what I have called umbrella stand of the industry in my research. So their value chain and the multi-sided platform Tencent has established over the years under the regulatory umbrella clause governed by Chinese authority. So they have assumed multiple roles from authorizing, producing, distributing the content, acting as the executive body of a number of the leagues. So posing as this kind of monopoly power enterprises dominate the market player have invited a lot of concerns. I'm not blaming their, what they have achieved and what they have contributed to the whole industry. What I mean is we invite more stakeholders, invite more like ByteDance, also emerging media conglomerates can also get involved to maintain this sustainable industry. So what the bright side is actually the esport industry in China follows a bottom-up path. So the industry with such a huge market size, the government has come up and set some rules to regulate it. But in this regard, the government is only set up the bottom line, leaving enough spaces for industry to further development, in particular for cultural and creative involvement. After all, the game contributes so much to GDP, so the government is still taking it seriously. The last thing I would like to demonstrate is there is an example I would like to share because a few days ago I attended an esports seminar held in Zhejiang province, and where chief government officials from cyberspace administration, propaganda department, national radio and television administration, and administration of the sport, a few more were presented there, and almost all of them, except the sports administration and the radio television administration, thought esport was the same as the game. So I'm so surprised that, or the funniest part I have observed is they were talking about esport from a parent perspective, and they feel like that's not to develop the whole industry. So we see that there's still a lot of stigmatized power that affect the whole industry. So I would strongly suggest to the young people, the player, the professional players, to defend yourself about the surrounding has been stigmatized, and be professional and think it seriously how to maintain and system your whole career. In particular, if you are still considered about a retired, career path. So how to transform your skills from being professional player to a manager or coach or etc. So other important role in the whole industry, and we have to defend for ourselves. Be strong. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, professors. So now, I want to get from you is, what's the best ways to prepare your students with the right resume to get into the esports industry? But then also, as we talk about, the lifespan of professional esports players, what are the marketable skills, of these potential esports players outside of the youth sports industry in the case, they retire early, right? Please, now.
Yeah. So I think, one thing that, I would definitely highlight here is that the Overwatch events that took place in the summer for the University of Hawaii showcased ways in which, again, we decenter the player as the central focus of the ecosystem. With my students, I had 20 interns, and these interns were from our UH Esports program. And a lot of them were not players. A lot of them played supporting roles in our program. So we had students who did content creation, video editing, graphics, social media. And one of the goals of working with the Overwatch team in the Overwatch League was to have them interact with this organization, right? To interact with Activision Blizzard in a way in which they could learn the whole array of skills that takes to run a global league. And interestingly, these students, these interns, usually don't take a front role role in our program. They actually are often in the background. And then it's usually the players who are often the face of our program. But with the Overwatch internship, it flipped. The actual players took a step back, and we had students that were from different majors, different degrees, different years in university, come and take a front position in the internship. And what they learned, again, as I go back to the example, the Overwatch League came to the University of Hawaii 5 different times. And each time they stayed for 1 week, from a Monday to a Friday. And that 1 week provided a spectrum of talents that was drawn from the students. So again, a Monday and Tuesday, we would have the IT people come in. They would set up the networks, they would set up the computer, they would do integrity checks, they would do communication checks. And then maybe a Tuesday and Wednesdays when the players came in, the professional teams would fly in from Los Angeles, Atlanta. They would come in, start to look at the different locations on campus to pick the rooms that they wanted. And so that drew on a very different skill set from the Monday and Tuesday, right? Monday and Tuesday was a very much IT based, but a Tuesday and Wednesday really didn't have much to do with IT per se, but had to do with soft skills. How do you talk with the players? How do you talk with the captains? How do you talk with the translators? You have to, a very interesting thing is that one of the biggest things that happened during the week was actually trying to negotiate with the players which room they wanted to stay in. They looked at the tables, they looked at the chairs. They would pick everything and be finical about everything that was in the room, not the computers. They would talk about chairs for at least an hour. And so what dawned on me is that, the entire esports industry is visible often because it is technologically sexy, right? It is new, it is fresh, it is up to date, it is the future. But when you actually operate at the global elite part of esports, what you understand is that these are just people with desires, people with ambitions, people who want to win ultimately. And you need people skills, right? You need to draw on 21st century people skills, which means that the students had to think globally. They had to be flexible. They had to be adaptive, right? If a player wanted to have a particular chair at a certain height, we had to go and figure out how to accommodate him as soon as possible, right? And so again, that was just midweek. And then of course, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, when we had the actual tournament. And that's when we saw the cherry on top when it came to this Overwatch League, and we got to watch as spectators, right? And so they got to spectate the game, we got to listen to comms, we got to see how broadcast works. And so again, going to your question of, how do we get kids into the industry? I think number one is that you introduce them to the whole array of talents and requirements and literacies that are required to make sure that they know that this is not just a player-centric activity, right? Once they understand that this really is a village that supports the players, right? This requires absolute collaboration across different skill sets. And again, I really emphasize these soft skill sets because that was what made this, a success at the end. And so for me to get kids into the industry, is really to emphasize the diversity of knowledge that's needed.
Thank you now. So we have from the audience questions about, very relevant questions. It says, has COVID, the pandemic impacted, the development and interest in esports, gaming, and related skills development? Anyone from the panel? Tim, please.
Actually, it's done the reverse. Before, for the past 2.5 years, we have hosted more than 300 events, large and small, not including the daily streaming sessions in our office. Out of 300, I think 70% of the events took place after the lockdown. Because as I mentioned, people have nowhere to go. They have to turn indoor for their entertainment and etc. So at least helps us a lot in the global expansion.
Okay, Tim. Anyone from the panel? Anyone else?
You want to go, Sky?
Oh, sorry, could you repeat the question real quick?
Yes, has COVID impacted the development and interest in esports?
I mean, absolutely. It definitely has increased the attention and visibility of esports, and especially streaming as well. And for us, for the Overwatch League to come to the University of Hawaii was also because of the consequences of COVID. Because they wanted to go to a location that was safer and more open. It definitely does. But at the same time, we have to understand that not all gaming communities benefit equally across the board when it comes to COVID, right? Because some gaming communities flourish in face-to-face settings, where other gaming communities or gaming populations are built to be remote. And so it's yes, but it's also uneven.
Okay, thank you. I think we are running out of time, and it's time for me to, wrap up. And thank you for all these insightful sharing. What I've picked up from you is, to really ensure a sustainable development of the esports industry, we have to have this kind of balanced approach. Taking care of all these, mental wellness, and emphasize, on the esports industry value chain, which actually composes of not just a player-centric skills, but all these soft skills and hard skills that provide support to the back-end operation, project management, technology support, on top of all the player skills and training. And I hope, we do it together in a collaborative way, to ensure a healthy and sustainable development of this industry, and so as that all these passionate esports lovers could find a career, and job opportunities from this. And with that, I thank all the panelists, for their sharing. And I've been told by the organizers that all the slides will be shared to all participants, even for those that we weren't able to show, during the panel. I think that will actually complete all these, knowledge sharing from our insightful panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chan, and for guiding us through a very interesting conversation. And thank you to all our panelists. For our next panel discussion, we will discuss gamification of social well-being. We would like to invite Ms. Jackie Wong to moderate this session. Joining her on stage is Professor Pei Chi Chung, Associate Professor, Department of Cultural and Religious Studies, the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And virtually, we will have Professor Jim Huntley, Professor and Head of Marketing, USC Games Faculty Advisor, USC Trojan Esports, Executive Producer, USC Games Expo, Co-Founding Partner, PACU Gaming, University of Southern California, and Ms. Maiki Jericho, Co-Founder and CEO at Tiramisu Script. We'll have a Q&A for this session. You may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Ms. Wong, please.
morning, everyone. It's really lovely to see all the beautiful faces here with us today. And welcome to all of those that are joining us virtually. My name is Jackie Wong. I'm the Director of Network and Student Programs at the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. As mentioned in this morning's opening, one pillar of APRU's key objectives are to address important challenges across the Asia Pacific. This can range from climate change, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to preventing the next pandemic. We think that the games industry, and esports have a pivotal role to play in educating the wide range of gamers and players who will take action eventually, and in cleaning up the business process, making sure that our communities are inclusive and that everyone can participate. Earlier this morning, you heard from the UNEP about the Playing for the Planet initiative, which inspires the game industry to also get involved in conservation. We think that this is an excellent example for the game industry worldwide. So now in today's panel, we'll now elaborate on this discussion by bringing 3 experts who will share their perspectives on the gamification of social well-being. I'll begin with my esteemed colleague here with me today, Professor Pei-Chi Chung. She's the Associate Professor from the Department of Cultural and Religious Studies at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Professor Chung received her PhD from the Department of Telecommunication at Indiana University in Bloomington. Her teaching and research interests include new media and digital culture. In her teaching, she focuses on new development in media and cultural studies. She recently co-edited a book, Media Technologies for Work and Place in East Asia, Critical Perspectives Toward Japan and the Two Koreas. So now I introduce Professor Pei-Chi Chung. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jackie, for the very wonderful introduction. And also thank you for APRU for inviting me here. Let me just get to my slide. Okay, so I would like to start with the title for the talk, very brief sharing of my idea on the gamification of social well-being in esports. Right. Before I start, I want to share a bit about my research context. In the past 12 years, I have been focusing on looking for a certain kind of model that can go beyond corporation, which I'll look into the public dimension to search for welfare perspective to help the young talent in the game industry, especially for turning themselves from their passion into a game, becoming an indie game developer. So in that aspect, I kind of look into the creative talent perspective in creative industry. And in some way, I want to see then how they actually become the agent for transferring the local culture into a form of heritage preservation for their own culture. But on the other hand, I'm also interested in the development or conceptualization for esports education. It's because I find that this area is very relevant to me, and it's also becoming more and more important. So in some way, I'm thinking about how it actually can become we can provide certain kind of information sharing at the university to enhance the happiness of the young generation. In some way, how would that be serving as a kind of a platform for us to talk about social progress? So, okay, but then if we look at the way how esports industry has evolved, we actually also are seeing the kind of challenges that we're facing. In the earlier panel, there are a lot of discussions and viewpoints about the business development and how young, especially the young player in China, has been facing a very harsh, growingly harsh environment for playing esport. It's not just included, it's not just in China, it's also global. For example, if we look at World W Organization, it actually officially recognized that video game addiction is a form of mental health, mental illness. So other than that aspect, but then during the pandemic, the WHO also recognized esports can be helping the pandemic control. So we're seeing the kind of boundary in the public dimension kind of shifting as the new situation evolves. So there are issues about like game violence and how esports can be participating one of the issues of a social problem. Women's game power, the misrepresentation of gender, and also a lot of psychological stress from the player. All right, so how do we face that kind of social challenges from the larger part of the society while we're also recognizing the personal struggle of a lot of esports players who are coming into the professional field? So it is very important to look at what things have happened and what kind of progress has evolved in the social practice of esports. So here I'm just using two examples here. That one is the Faker from South Korea, and the right one is the player called Gao Tianlia in China. Both of them actually, I think they are just two of a lot of similar kind of player who actually have struggled very far to make their own pace in the esports industry. All right, so when we look at a certain kind of resolution to kind of pick up where we actually are facing for the moment, I find that maybe we need to kind of go beyond the current formula or territory esport to start thinking about some other issues in the larger context of video game industry, to think about the power of gamification to support the esport. We are seeing in the esport history, we have gone through three very interesting stages. The first one is the professionalization. The second one is turning with the streaming technology, how the market has taken off with many of the people involving in the spectatorship and also making esport into a home profession for the young talent. So what would be the next stage? I think it's also very interesting to think about the next stage, especially after the pandemic. So here I'm providing a couple concepts that scholars have talked about in a game study. For example, how we actually can design game to express the idea, how we can design game to enter the community, or design game for the girl power and to become more aware of the environmental issues, and also to recognize game as an ideal environment to recognize nature. So these are all the issues that I will be very happy to talk more about in the future discussion. All right, so in conclusion, I just would like to end up the idea of computational creativity in the cultural space, how the data environment that's being modeled in the example esports has been serving as a forefront when we see what will be coming in the data society in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chung. That's really helpful to hear, how students, how young people are struggling with the public perception of gaming and esports and their participation in it, balancing their mental health, but also finding their own self-fulfillment through gaming, and how the future of gaming and esports is more inclusive, will focus more on conservation, and will make a better future for everyone. So thank you. I now will turn to Professor Jim Huntley. He's the professor and head of marketing of USC Games. He's also the faculty advisor of USC Trojan Esports, and he's the executive producer of USC Games Expo, co-founding partner of PACU Gaming at the University of Southern California. my alma mater, and my personal hero, Jim Huntley. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. This is the first time I've been called someone's personal hero in an introduction, so I'll take it. Hey, everybody. My name is Jim Huntley. As Jackie mentioned, I'm a professor. I did not pay her to give me those accolades, by the way. I actually come by them through hard work and the bags under my eyes. I've been doing marketing for the last 25 years, everywhere from General Mills to Nestle, toy company Mattel, you might have heard of it, to THQ, a game publisher that's now called THQ Nordic and SodaStream. I've been a professor for around the last 5 years, and what I'm seeing from a trend, from a societal perspective when it comes to digital gaming and esports is probably three big ones that are affecting not just the world of gaming and esports, but us as a society overall. The democratization of entertainment, as I like to call it. I think back when I was in my 20s, and I think maybe a lot of us who are in an older demographic remember movie stars and celebrities, and you would watch the movies they starred in, and they would be on magazine covers. There were these things called magazines, kids, that were printed on paper that you would read articles about people. They were physical things. There were maybe 20, 30, 40 movie stars that captured all the headlines, and everything everybody did was always in print. And now, because of the democratization of entertainment, what this generation considers celebrities are YouTube celebrities and streamers. And the number and the fragmentation of that celebrity has been spread out to a larger base of people. And the people that build fandoms, they're much more and much more numerous, and have the ability to engage with their fan base much more directly than they ever did back when most of us were growing up and going through college. So because entertainment is becoming democratized, there's a lot more decentralization, which is building up in a good way digital communities. If I'm a huge fan of a particular music artist or streamer or gamer or even developer or designer, I can find a community thanks to the internet and Reddit and other websites and platforms like that will let me interact with other people that also are huge fans of that talent that I love and appreciate, or that brand that I love and appreciate. I can find like-minded people and interact and engage with them. But I can also, in some cases, if that celebrity is engaged back with me, I can actually have a direct connection with them. So it's a brave new world where I can actually find people that love niches of things that I love. Where if I live, anywhere in the United States or around the world, there might not be anyone that loves, 1990s Japanese anime as much as I do, but thanks to the World Wide Web, I can find an entire audience of people that do love that, and I can find, ways to engage with the creators of that type of content directly. I think that I always like to say to my clients when I'm consulting, as well as my students, that everyone's strength or everything's strength also tends to be its weakness. The fact that we can find communities that are like-minded and as like-minded as we are, there's a double-edged sword because it also results in some fragmentation. When it comes to personal growth, we're seeing more and more that, even though we are all embracing the internet, or many of us are embracing the internet and the power that it provides us to build community, the downside to building that community is a level of fragmentation when it comes to our ability as humans, because, even though the technology has evolved, our bodies and our brains and how we think and process information hasn't really evolved as quickly. So our ability to focus on longer term projects and longer term goals has become somewhat eroded. We've fallen into the, I'd say, trap a little bit of looking for short term dopamine hits for what we're doing or what we're engaging in, and that's resulting in some people not being as goal oriented in this generation as I would say long term goal oriented in the younger generation than they were back in the day. Interpersonal engagement. There are people with myself included, with incredibly rich online lives with friends and acquaintances, and even reconnecting with family thanks to social media. But there is a trade-off of there's only so many hours a day, and that digital connectivity that you get with the people that might live around the world or around the country. I'm talking to you all, from Los Angeles, California right now. But I've got, I and other people need to make sure we're maintaining those physical relationships in real life and not completely, living online. And I'd say engaging with society. I think we've had more than a few articles about the dark side of this this fragmentation, this democratization, and being able to actually manipulate groups of people and pushing them to do things that normally they wouldn't do if they were engaging with people in the real world. So What's really cool is that we are becoming more engaged and more connected digitally with people around the world that are like us and that we can interact with and have a meaningful relationship with in ways we never could before. What we do need to make sure is that we're finding a balance, especially for the younger generation, between living that online life as well as making sure that you're still connected and engaged in a positive way with your offline life. What I'd say the other trend that I see, and I like to joke about it, but while we've all been living, we've also kind of, without meaning to, we've been playing a game. We pursue engagement and connectivity via social media, and our scorekeeping is likes and shares. Our money is increasingly on the blockchain. We are romantically connecting via dating and chat apps. We collect art now by NFTs. We invest with microtransaction stock purchase apps. So our world and how we interact with society in general is becoming more and more digitized and online. And we have to make sure that we are intentional about how we are having, the direction that we take that, and the I'd say teaching that we give to our students and our younger generation to make sure that it's heading in a positive direction, because technology at its core is an amoral initiative. It doesn't really have a good or a bad side. We really have to put thought into what we're making and how we're making and how we're engaging with it. And I'd say what we're doing from a program perspective is just actively engaging with institutions and governments to make sure that that direction always tracks in a positive path, not a negative one or a neutral one, something that's going to be good for society and humankind as a whole, and not just a short-term hit. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Huntley. That's really helpful. And I don't take your warning lightly. We can live full lives online. We can, as you say, date and collect art. But we also need to be careful about the danger of being isolated and making sure that we still live our lives fully in real life. I'll now turn to Ms. Maika Garika. She's the co-founder and CEO of Tiramisu at Script. She's also the author of The Rise of the Wildlife Gamer: How Game Experiences Can Influence the Future of Conservation Interest. Ms. Maika Garika, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone, and so good to be here. So I'm basically, quickly to introduce myself, I'm the co-founder of an innovation studio that is called Script, and a resulting venture that is called Tiramisu, which is what we call a social network of kindness. And my background is basically being an innovator, a business strategist, and a human-centered designer that is focused on working in the technology sector for a while, but since 4 years is really focused on using technology for social and environmental impact. And what I've done in the last year, especially since COVID started, because that's also when my project Tiramisu started, is the topic of reimagining social media and digital communities, and looking at well-being as a key component in that. And in the last year also, I dove very deeply into the opportunity of gaming for both nature interest and conservation outcomes, together with a game studio that is called Internet of Elephants, that already released 6 wildlife-themed and really wildlife-focused, conservation-focused games, and with the Luke Hoffman Institute, which is an entity of the World Wildlife Fund. So a key question that I've been asking myself in all of this is basically, what is the role that our environment and that our well-being plays in our virtual future? And that is a bit of the red thread in all of this. And what I see is that basically, and as my 4 speakers already said, games and virtual networks are increasingly taking over a lot of these aspects of our daily lives that we otherwise would have done in the real world. And when it comes to the younger generations, and especially, for example, now Generation Z, which is now 16 to 24 years old, a lot of the socializing is actually happening in social media and through games, and there are a little bit of gender differences in which group is actually preferring to socialize. But we also see a lot of people that are not necessarily regular gamers that are really going to these environments to connect. And so games have a lot of opportunity there also for really varied kind of interaction and for a much more complete kind of interaction. And the metaverse, in the end, that everyone is talking about, to me, is also a place where those two worlds collide, where they become more seamlessly interwoven also with our physical experiences. And so when I look at the future of that, I can basically see two scenarios. One is where we are increasingly getting disconnected from our virtual worlds, from our physical world, where we're spending all our time on screen, where we are missing out on real social connections, and where we are basically getting more and more disconnected from nature. Or I can see the other perspective, where games are enriching our real world experiences, and where the actions and benefits of those two worlds are interlinked, and where nature is becoming a part of that experience. And then there can be really links between those worlds, where, for example, we can buy responsible products in the supermarket and we get rewarded with credits that we can then use in a game. Or where our gameplay is encouraging us to do good, where we need to move and run in order to unlock new levels and basically be part of the experience. And where we can also get some real world knowledge that comes to us through these games. So I'm personally an optimist, so I'm very excited about the second scenario. And I also think that we as technologists and as game developers, I think there is a big responsibility in making sure that we are positively and not negatively impacting the life of coming generations, and that we also play a role in the preservation of our planet, because there is a lot at stake. And I think initiatives like the Playing for the Planet initiative are such a great example of how this can actually work. And then when I think also looking at this panel, at this conference, a little bit looking at the collaboration between universities and the gaming sector, I think there is a lot of opportunity there in order to really understand the impact and really measure the impact that actually games have for well-being. That's one thing, basically defining measures of well-being, really looking at what is the actual experience doing to our well-being and personal health. And on the other hand, there is also a lot of opportunity to look into the effects that it actually has on, for example, our perception of nature. So as an example, Internet of Elephants was just doing a randomized control trial where they basically identified that one of their games has similar outcomes than a wildlife documentary in actually raising awareness and knowledge and attitudes and donation behaviors within people. And then I think another part is really also about gamifying education experience, because there is so much entertainment and fun and learning opportunity in games that I think that should be really used in practice. And the other part, and I think that that's something that we've already been hearing a lot in the previous panel, is this topic of people-centric design, because students are the next generation that are the users of games currently, and they should also play a key role in the creation of those games. So through my work with Tiramisu, I had a lot of opportunity to talk to students and student clubs in various universities and different areas of the world. And what I got to see is basically a lot of young people that are extremely motivated and extremely caring about social and environmental issues, but are often also very uncertain about where they can place their action, where they can place their activity. And I see basically a really big opportunity in using games and raising this awareness, guiding knowledge, and starting also action in the real world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Micah. Your points are well taken. The pandemic turned the education industry upside down and really inspired, and I think it really opened up our idea of what education can look like. So I like the idea of gamifying education as well. Professor Chung, I would like to invite all of our speakers to come back for a bit of question and answer here. So, Professor Chung, you talked about the stereotypes, and this is something that we heard about in the first panel as well. And you also mentioned there's new opportunities with emerging technologies with the metaverse, blockchain, and others that can really help us to change the perception of esports and the gaming industry. And I think that it would be really helpful for us to hear from you more about the ways that players can overcome these stereotypes and how we can work together on defending the industry and our work in it.
Okay, thank you. I think we are in a very interesting turning point, especially we see how the esports industry, the progress has been making, has been very fast. So one of the issues for overcoming all this stereotype, I think we have to look into the way that how playing esports can encourage the young player to have more connection with the local community. In some way to kind of balance, as the speaker, Professor Williams was saying, the balance in between the online and offline. That's also the responsibility for designing for an ideal virtual world. For it's the responsibility for the corporation, it's a responsibility for everybody. Overall, we're creating an environment that's going to be for the young generation to spend a lot of time every day in there when they are playing the game. So how we actually can put heritage and also engagement with the local community in the playing of the esport will be one thing that all of us can consider. And I'm also seeing with the emerging technology, there's also this transmedia turn that playing game is not just within one platform. Sometimes there can be, for example, like in League of Legends, the game, recently there's a animation that came out as a kind of background to support the player when they are playing the game. They will be able to identify to enter this immersive scenario. So within that kind of process, how can we put in, for example, gender equality and also racial equality, that kind of mindset to put into that production process? It will actually help a lot with the balance of the current problem of having so many stereotypes on race, class, and gender. So I think that's the potential. And then if you look at the whole history of esports, we see how it's emerging from the geek culture into the growingly visibly mainstream culture. So this kind of techno dimension will certainly leave a lot of opportunity and potential for us to further develop. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly we know that representation matters, and representation in games and of the players is really important in making sure that we all feel that we are included in this industry. Professor Huntley, I know that USC has done a lot to address gender equity, inclusion, even climate change through the games department there. And what I know about the USC Games Department is one of the only games academic programs in the APRU network. And I know it's multidisciplinary, it's multifaceted, and it'd be really good to hear from you all that USC has done to address these important topics within the curriculum.
Absolutely. So, our USC Games program has diversity in its DNA. The way our program is structured is somewhat unique. That's why we've been ranked #1 for the last 12 years in terms of games program in North America. But we are split between the USC School of Cinematic Arts and USC's Viterbi School of Engineering, because it takes the art and science coming together to make a really engaging and compelling interactive and gaming experience. And our student body, I like to joke that we've been focused on diversity before diversity was cool. We've been 55% women, female, non-binary for over a decade now. So we've been kind of living and breathing this. And I've only been here for 5 years, so I certainly can't take credit for it, but our program's been living and breathing this for a very long time. So it's great to see the world catch up with what we've been doing for a while now. But because we are a hybrid between engineering and cinema, we're focused on combining tech and storytelling. And we're constantly challenging our students to tell unique stories, to give us experience and points of view that we haven't seen before. My background's in marketing, and when I first got here, I would have some of the students come in and go, "Oh, you're the marketing guy. You want the mass market, big shooter, first person shooter." It's like, really what I want is something unique. I want something I've never played before or seen before. That's really what, if I'm going to put my marketing hat on, that's what really sells. Giving me an experience that I haven't encountered before is the thing that's going to break through the clutter versus doing another cookie cutter version of another game that's out there. A couple of examples, or a few examples. We had a game last year featured in our USC Games Expo from an MFA student called Alma, which was the protagonist in that game was a Cuban American nurse who was trying to balance her life as a nurse and working during the pandemic. So it was very real time and in the real world. There's a game called Plasticity that we had a few years ago that was all about conservation and the impact of going green, where the player was able to move back and forth in time and see what the impact was of her actions in the past, how that might impact her environment in the future. There's a game called Our America that we featured 2 years ago in our USC Games Expo that happens every May. That was all about being an African American in the U.S. During a police stop and the different paths that player in a VR environment, the choices that they might make and how that might impact the end of that stop, which usually, unfortunately, based on real life, it ends in tragedy. As well as, there's a game we haven't even announced yet that will be showcasing, it's in my class, the Advanced Games Project class, AGP, the little icon in the background here, that will be showcasing this May, that's all about social anxiety. So students are creating games and meaningful experiences that they want to not only show the world to express themselves, but it's about topics that they find important. Related to that, we're involved in the Global Climate Jam that we've hosted the last year or two. We are sponsors of the Game Devs of Color that happens in Los Angeles. And then we've absolutely been able to send a handful of students for the very first time to an organization called Able Gamers. It's all about improving accessibility for video games. So it's an exciting time for making sure that we've got diversity, equity, inclusion in the forefront of what we do and what we're encouraging our students to engage in. I say encouraging with a chuckle because we are supporting them, but they're the ones driving it. The fact that younger generation, as Maika mentioned, like it's the younger generation that's driving a lot of this. Hey, we want to go do this stuff, and we're like, great, we want you to, and we want to give them the tools to be able to succeed and bring our art form and bring our industry into these new areas so that we can experiment and make sure that we're staying relevant with future generations.
Well, that is a lot. We really thank USC for really shaping the students' experiences. And I know when I was at USC, I was really grateful for having those opportunities to pursue my dreams and to know that I was welcomed in different spaces. I'd like also to follow up with Maika. I know that through your research, you have made an analysis about the potential of reaching, why do video games, why is that a good medium for us to reach players, to educate our population around conservation and wildlife protection?
So it's been actually a really interesting experience doing this research because we really looked into audience data, and we basically did some analysis of data from the Global Web Index, and we looked into basically really who are the audiences that are really interested in wildlife as a kind of basis of this project that we were doing, and what we've been finding has been actually really astonishing to me, just to the extent of the numbers that we actually found in terms of who are the people that care about conservation or related topics. So if I can just give a couple of the things. So those are basically numbers of internet users, and we basically saw that there's 1.1 billion people that care about wildlife in basically internet users, and a lot of them are under 40 years old, and 70% of them are already gamers that engage in games at least once per week. We had 1.2 billion people that want to contribute to their communities and want to help the environment. 74% of them are gamers. 1.4 billion people actively build healthy habits. 70% of them are gamers. And then there's also other groups like pet owners, like people that regularly go outdoors, like people that are parents and care about the future of their kids. So all of these groups and all of these people care about wildlife and conservation to some extent already. And so for me, it has been a really interesting realization to see that including basically wildlife and nature into game experiences, and then I'm speaking a little bit as a marketer, but it's basically not just something that you would add on top of a game experience just to do something for a good cause, but it's actually something that the people are already wanting and already readily caring about. And to me, that is changing a little bit the perspective of the importance of how important is it actually to have this kind of content in games. And then when we're also looking at, for example, who has access to readily go outside and go into the world and go into nature and go into the environment, we also see that for a lot of people that grow up in urban settings, that grow up maybe with less family income, this is actually an opportunity that they might not have. So games can play also a really important role in opening up this world of nature, of conservation to groups that might otherwise not be able to experience that. And then the other part of it is also then the topic of why do people play? And we see it very much that younger generations, so Gen Z, are really focused a lot on learning and on socialization. And when we get a little bit older, it's then a lot more also about socializing, but also about this kind of escaping from your real world situation, which I think has been a lot of a topic also during the pandemic. And so really getting this understanding has been helping me also a lot to really understand and look at the importance that conservation and nature plays in these kind of roles, but in the gaming world, but also really the opportunity of how many people are readily there and are readily willing to engage on these topics.
Thank you so much, Micah. I'm getting the signal that we have to close, so I'm very sorry that our time together was so short. So please let me join me in thanking our excellent panelists today who shared important insights on the gaming and esports industry, how roles for gamers and business and conservation and wildlife protection and strategies for universities consider in supporting students in reshaping the industry so that we can ensure that the future represents the community that is a part of it and that is so dedicated to building the culture. So please join me in thanking our panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong, and thank you to all our panelists.